How is this as a way to end the day? The scene is the edge of the Atacama Desert in southwestern Peru. This is several hours south of Lima. I experienced this as the sun set on a full day of action and seeing the sights. Nestled in the dunes outside of the oasis town of Huacachina, several dozen of my new friends and I got the chance to say goodbye to daylight in style.
Perfect end of the day.
It was just about the culmination of a 17-hour day trip from and back to where I was staying in the Barranco neighborhood of Lima. There was much more involved than just enjoying the sundown in the desert.
I've traveled 3 or 4 hours south of Lima for a big adventure today. This is the town of Huacachina. It's a fantastic oasis situated on the edge of the Atacama Desert. I will check out the town, ride through the dunes, and maybe even do a bit of sandboarding while I'm here. The tour also includes a stop in the coastal village of Paracas, where I'll hit the water and cruise by some nearby islands. Let's go.
I hardly know where to begin, as there were so many elements during the day that were spectacular. I suppose my favorite activity should come first. This was how we spent a good half hour to hour. We roared through the desert in dune buggies. Up and down we went through the sand. There were times that we would get to the top of a dune and there was no visual clue as to what was on the other side. Everyone, and I mean every single person, was thrilled with the ride. Our driver was Gato. Gato in Spanish means cat. He pushed his machine to the limit and left all of us who were in his care feeling like we were experiencing the ride of our lives. Several times we went airborne. Another feature that got our hearts racing was the proximity of all the other buggies and drivers. All of the vehicles were crisscrossing through the dunes, and it seemed impossible that we could all share the same space and not have a collision. The way Gato would scream into one of the areas where drivers and passengers had stopped and disembarked left me fearful for the safety of those people. I rode in a 4x4 through the Tunisian desert about 6 months ago and thought the excursion was fantastic. Compared to this, that now seems like a kiddie ride. If you ever get the opportunity to tackle this adventure, don't hesitate. Traveling from Lima just to do this would have been worth it, but there was so much more. Aside from the buggy rides, we made the most of the tall and steep dunes in another way. You've obviously heard of snowboarding. This portion of the desert just outside of Huacachina is known for world-class sandboarding. Knowing it was going to be a part of the excursion, I was a little concerned, since I envisioned that everyone would make the trip standing up. Any fears were alleviated though, as the operators discouraged anyone from sliding down the sand in that manner. Instead, most all of us treated it like riding a sled down the hill in the snow. It was still exhilarating. Each of us was given a board and we rode from the top of a dune to the bottom. We got up and walked to the top of the next rise and did it all over again. The first descents were pretty tame and they became increasingly longer and steeper as we went. Final drop was by far the best of all. I persuaded the one guy in our group who was standing up for the rides to take my camera with him on the way down. An experienced snowboarder, he said the sand was quite different and he went down a couple of times on his way to the bottom. He captured me at the conclusion of my free fall, and the smile on my face is quite telling.
How was that?
Very good. That's a rush.
Watching others have a blast was almost as much fun as taking the plunge yourself. Most found it to be a rousing good time. A few decided to walk instead of slide, and at least one guy cursed his partner for putting him through this. Believe me when I say that days went by before I shed all of the sand I picked up in this place. With all of the action, there were only a few times when you were able to stop and appreciate your location in the world. How fortunate all of us are to have experienced this environment in the first person. The Atacama Desert contains one of the driest areas on the planet. There are spots where absolutely nothing grows. NASA trains astronauts here to simulate what conditions would be like on another lifeless planet. There is one place in the Atacama where it is said that it hasn't rained for over 500 years. Can you imagine? This part of the desert does get, on average, 4 inches of rain per year. It still does not rain from May through August, late fall through much of the winter. Huacachina draws a mainly younger crowd. They sandboard through the day, stay in hostels, and drink and party well into the night. The town sits on the banks of a natural oasis. The water comes from an aquifer far underground. Life abounds near the water, and people have long taken vacations to visit the unique setting. Only about 100 people call this place home, and tourism is the sole business. I was able to roam through the streets and around the oasis for just a short period as we were waiting to head into the desert. Likewise, I spent a little more time in the village after all of the activity was completed. It looks as though it would be fun to spend a night or two here. Before the desert portion of the excursion, we had a completely different type of adventure. Our group packed onto a boat and headed out into the Pacific from the coastal town of Paracas. This was astonishing from an entirely new perspective. From the dock, it took 30 to 45 minutes to push through the rolling seas to get to several nearby islands. Once there, we navigated around some of what are known as the Ballestas Islands. They were special little rocks, with some holding natural arches shaped over time by the relentless movement of the water. Others featured jagged slabs and stones rising straight up out of the depths. As if that wasn't enough, there were a few chances to see some of the local wildlife. On more than one occasion, we spied a sea lion or two lounging on a bit of dry land, taking a break from frolicking through the swells. There were several boats maneuvering to give their passengers the best look at the mammals. The little guys and girls could not have cared any less and moved only when they were ready to do so. I think we saw around 4 sea lions in total. There were countless seabirds, however, perched on the rocks and taking flight as well. This is all part of the Paracas National Reserve. Some people refer to this as the Mini-Galapagos, or the poor man's Galapagos, because of the rock formations and the wildlife. There were moments inside the village of Paracas to look at the ocean front. We saw fishermen unloading the seafood that they had harvested just that morning. It looked like the fishing industry is doing quite well in these waters. There was also time to wander through the town for a moment.
When first looking at the trip, I considered Paracas as sort of the appetizer, not the main event. But this town is really cool, and I really enjoyed the trip out onto the water, onto the Pacific, around those islands, saw some sea lions. I do have one tip though, and that is if you have the chance, get a seat up front. I sat in the back and got totally soaked.
Lunch was not included in the price of the excursion, but just about everyone grabbed the chance to get something to eat. For me, it was a fabulous plate of ceviche. The fish and shrimp and squid, plus sweet potato and choclo, or boiled large kernel corn, was very satisfying. That was the day, from the ocean to the desert, and ending with a nighttime stroll through Huacachina. It was one of the best tours I've taken, and it was a huge bargain too. Everything, the bus ride, dune buggies, sandboarding, and the trip out to the islands in the Pacific cost just over $70. That is astonishing.
What a magnificent excursion. So much packed into one single day. It's a long one though, and I've got more time before it's over. Pickup this morning was at 6 back in Barranco. We will return somewhere close to 11 p.m. I will sleep well tonight. Thanks for watching Old, Alone, and Far From Home. I will see you next time.